Well, the future of Arizona quarterback Kyla Murray has been a hot topic this offseason. Murray's antics in angling for a new contract have placed plenty of doubts in the minds of fans and pundits alike. But according to those inside the room, like left tackle DJ Humphries, anyone who thinks Murray is not in the Cardinals' future is a, quote, plumb fool, end quote. Murray set to make $5.4 million in 2022 with a base salary of just $965,000. One of the biggest issues for the Cardinals was that collapse at the end of last season. As you look at their split season ranks, they ranked 11th or worse in 4 of the 5 categories in the back end of the season and dropped 4 of their last 5 games. That's 5 of their last 6 if you include that wild card loss to eventual Super Bowl champion Rams, where they were shellacked 34-11. For more on the Cardinals, let's welcome in our 2-time Super Bowl champion, Bryant McFadden, as our look at the NFC West continues. All right, let's take a look at this collapser, BMAC. You heard about the back end of that season. They lost 4 of their last 5 regular season games. Then they lose the wild card game. Then you have all the antics with Kyla Murray. We'll talk about Kyla in a second, but first, can you make sense of last season's collapse for us?
Well, what I think it is, when you look at the way they've been able to start, quality head coaches, quality coordinators, they love to make adjustments that work in favor of their team. And what we're seeing from Arizona, just my opinion, is that Cliff Kingsbury and his staff, they do a phenomenal job getting the guys ready. But then when they get scouted from top to bottom, they don't make adjustments. Their adjustments, they're not equaling out to the teams they're playing against, the coaches they're playing against. And that's why we're starting to see this collapse, especially when you look at their division, how difficult their division has been. And once again, I do believe the NFC West will be a tough division. They got to find a way to make adjustments based on the team's adjustments they've done to them. So starting off on fire is one thing, but being able to maintain and sustain that level of play is another thing. So I think that boils more on the coaching than the players. Now, last year, Jeremy, remember, they lost their best offensive skill guy in Deandre Hopkins. I think the final 6 games or something like that, and clearly the offense was stagnant without number 10 in the lineup. But even when you lose a key contributor like that, you still would like to see more efficient play on both sides of the football, especially the offensive side when your head coach is an offensive-minded coach. So they have to find a way to make adjustments based on what they're seeing from opposing teams, because if they don't, we will see the same collapse once again this season.
Yeah, and as you saw on the board there, it's not just NFL collapses with Cliff Kingsbury. It's kind of followed him throughout his coaching career, those back-end collapses. So 2022 obviously going to be a big season for him. Also going to be a big season for Kyla Murray. Let's talk about his situation. An up-and-down offseason. He wanted out, then he's saying he's committed, then he scrubs the social media. What about Kyla Murray and this up-and-down offseason? What are you expecting from him in 2022? Or better yet, what does he have to do in 2022?
Well, when it comes to being a player, we would like to see Kyla Murray take another step when it comes to being more consistent. You look at some of the big-time young quarterbacks, up-and-coming quarterbacks that kind of solidified their status. Kyla Murray has the same skill set. Josh Allen's of the world, Lamar Jackson's of the world. Heck, even Joe Burrow, looking at what he was able to do. So one would think that Kyla Murray is heading towards that direction. But we just talked about the collapse when it comes to the team, the success. We saw the same collapses coming from their quarterback in Kyla Murray. So me personally, he has to take that next big step in the right direction, into the neighborhood of the likes of Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, because he has that type of skill set, and the expectations are clearly that's where they are for him. And then when you look at the happiness for Kyla Murray will only be happy if he believes he's going to get paid. And I think they verbally expressed that to him, because you remember a month or so ago, he wiped everything off his social media handles regarding the Arizona Cardinals. He was disgruntled. So verbally, I don't know what the discussions was between Kyla and the organization, but I believe they told him we will get a deal done. Now, will that actually happen, especially before the start of the season? We have to wait and see. But right now, he's smiling from ear to ear, as you saw on his profile shot. But will that smile turn into a frown if he's not paid by September, October, or November? I think it will turn into a frown.
Yeah, you wonder just when that deal is going to get done and what it is going to look like. As mentioned, his base salary for this coming season, $965,000, set to make $5.4 million overall. Okay, so you talked about DeAndre Hopkins and the fact that they struggled offensively without D-Hop in the back end of that season. Well, I mean, guess what? He's been suspended for PEDs, so for the first 6 weeks of this season, he's not going to be available. When you look at this wide receiver depth chart, who fills the gap left by D-Hop?
It has to be Hollywood Brown. I think that's why they went, I know. That's why they went out with that draft day trade a few months ago and trading for Hollywood Brown, because they knew DeAndre would miss some time, and they feel like Hollywood, especially with his relationship with Kyla Murray, has everything he needs to have to be their number one wide receiver. And I think, they could be in a good situation based on what was available. Now get this, a year ago, quietly, he had a career-like year. Over 1,000 yards, over 90 receptions. I mean, 6 touchdowns was a bit down based on what he's done the 2 years prior, but yet and still, he was pretty productive in a run-oriented offense. In 3 years, quietly in 3 years, 21 touchdowns. 21 touchdowns. So now he's coming from a run-oriented offense to a up-tempo, fast-paced, throw it around the park type of offense. Think that's what he came from in Oklahoma. And remember, his quarterback at Oklahoma was Kyla Murray. So I do believe the Arizona Cardinals feel like Hollywood Brown has what it takes to be the number one wide receiver until DeAndre returns. Let's wait and see how it all plays out. But I think he will have a better productive year when it comes to the stats compared to what we've seen in years past in Baltimore based on how run-heavy their offense was.
Another college quarterback wide receiver combo being reunited in the pros. So the last 2 first-round picks for the Cardinals, Isaiah Simmons and Zavin Collins, are starting to emerge. Collins, 70 solo tackles last year, had over 100 combined tackles. Simmons had 25 combined. When you look at their continued development, what is the key to that for you?
Well, when you look at, let's highlight Isaiah Simmons first, right? Coming into year 3. Rookie year, we didn't really see a lot. They were moving him around quite a bit. He was on the first level, the second level, played in the secondary as well. So he didn't really get an opportunity to understand what they want him to do. But in year 2, look at the numbers. I mean, clearly over 100 total tackles. I would like to see him get more sacks. You saw what he did playing on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, also had 7 PBUs. So he started to really grasp the understanding of what his position is and how he needs to go about in being productive and playing that position. So I think Isaiah Simmons would take another step in the right direction in being a very, very productive, prolific-like player for their defense. And I think Vance Joseph, who is the DC, has a plan in place. Now, when we transition to Zavin Collins, right, the first rounder from a year ago, the issue for Zavin Collins was Jordan Hicks was there. Remember, they anointed Zavin the starting linebacker before one down was played. And eventually, Jordan Hicks showed that I am the best, one of the best linebackers, interior linebackers you have, and I have to be on the football field. So because of that, we didn't get a chance to see a lot of Zavin Collins, especially playing on the defensive side. He only participated in 20% of the defensive snaps. And because of that, we didn't see the numbers we thought we will see. And I think we will see more production from him because he is the guy now. Hicks is no longer there in Arizona. He signed a free agent deal with the Minnesota Vikings. So guess what? There's no competition. There's no battle. It is Zavin Collins' job to lose. And I think because of the opportunities, we will see an increase in production as well.
Yeah, Hicks was released, and also Chandler Jones, another guy that is not a part of the Cardinals anymore. The Cards did add some bodies, and you mentioned that notable trade with Baltimore for Hollywood Brown. What's their most underrated move that they've made this offseason?
Well, for me, I think it's underrated because it hasn't warranted a lot of recognition. But re-signing Zach Ertz. Remember, they traded for Zach Ertz midway through the season, and he flourished, right? He had over 50 receptions, 56 to be exact, 574 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Why that's an under-the-radar-like signing? The experience Zach Ertz has, especially in the red zone, he is still, in my opinion, a top 5 tight end in the National Football League, and he provides another reliable pass catcher for Kyla Murray while DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. We talked about it. DeAndre Hopkins will be suspended the first 6 ball games. We're still trying to figure out who the number 1 guy will be. I think it will be Hollywood Brown when it comes to the wide receiver position. But what about the tight end? The tight end has been known to be the quarterback's next best friend. And that's a unique thing to have when you have an experienced guy like Zach Ertz, a guy that has been known to be very, very consistent and reliable, especially during key moments of a ball game. So like I said, we know who Zach Ertz is, but when you look at some of the headlines, some of the more notable things that have been talked about coming from coming from Arizona, it hasn't really been involved in Zach Ertz's name. Me personally, this is an under radar signing, especially knowing that your top guy in DeAndre Hopkins won't be there, and you need another reliable pass catcher to make plays for the quarterback in Kyla Murray.
B-Mac, that opening few weeks for the Cards is a gauntlet. Kansas City at Vegas versus the Rams, then at Carolina. I mean, they could be 1-4 by week 5. What part of their schedule worries you the most?
That's it. It's how they start the season off. And the reason why this worries me the most, Jeremy, is because they have to go through that gauntlet without DeAndre Hopkins. When DeAndre missed those ball games a year ago, it wasn't just the offense was stagnant. They didn't win. They didn't win a lot. So you start off out the gate with a perennial Super Bowl contender in the Chiefs. You travel to the Vegas Raiders, who went to the playoffs. You got your division foe, the Rams. You travel to Carolina, and granted, Carolina was a bad team, but when they're healthy, especially on the defensive side, on going there, that could be a difficult game. And the Philadelphia Eagles, who's much improved when you look at the personnel. And you have to go through that entire gauntlet without your best skill offensive player. So me personally, just that gauntlet alone, the weeks from 1 through 5 can really tell the entire story for the Arizona Cardinals if they get off to a bad start. So that's the schedule stretch that I'm worried about.
Yeah, and the good part is after that schedule stretch, I mean, they do see the Seahawks in 2 of the next 4 weeks. That could potentially give them a couple of wins to feel good as they head towards the back end of the season. All right, the Cardinals plus 300 to win the NFC West, plus 1,300 to win the conference. Their win total is set at 9. B-Mac, if you're looking at those numbers, what's the futures bet that you're placing?
Win total at 9. I'm sorry, Arizona Cardinal fans. I'm taking the under. I'm taking the under. And here's why. No DeAndre Hopkins the first 6 weeks. I just gave that stretch that I'm concerned, which is weeks 1 through 5 against Kansas City, the Raiders, Rams, Carolina, Philly. I mean, if you start off and you 1-4 in that first 5-game stretch, it's going to be very, very difficult. So I'm concerned about the start of the season and how difficult it is, especially without DeAndre Hopkins. And we talked about the second half slumps. See, if they start off slow and they continue with another second half slump, it's going to be a long, long outing for the Cardinals. So until I see otherwise from the coaching staff, primarily speaking, the head coach and Coach Cliff Kingsbury, and being able to sustain production, especially in the second half, I don't know if they can do it. So I'm taking the under with this particular bet when it comes to the win total because of not having DeAndre, and then that start of the season, and also too, they've been known to drop the ball in the second half. And don't forget about the NFC West. I understand Seattle's pretty much in a rebuild, but San Francisco, playoff caliber team with championship aspirations, and the same definitely can be said for the Rams. And they have to play those 2 teams twice.
Yeah, the Rams looking to run it back, and you saw minus 130 to go under for them to finish below their win total of 9. 2-time Super Bowl champion Bryant McFadden breaking down the Arizona Cardinals for us. Going to be an interesting offseason for Cliff Kingsbury and company. Interesting season ahead, certainly. For more from B-Mac, be sure to check out the podcast, All Things Covered. Alongside Pat P, they are breaking down the latest moves, storylines, and games, as well as interviewing some of the NFL's elite talent. Download and follow All Things Covered wherever you get your podcast audio.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.